this feeling that fans talked about, and I think is very real, that there was a sense of community with the club. It was described to me as being like a family, but without the bad bits of your family. You know, you'd live in London and go to see Luton. But fundamentally, the community around the team was not the local community anymore. Luton, a former industrial town, big industry from hat making, later from car manufacture with Vauxhall. And the area around the stadium is now almost completely South Asian, a bit of Eastern European immigration as well. It's red brick terraces. And to get into the stadium, you literally go through converted terraced houses. It's embedded, quite literally. But the fan base is predominantly white. And I should say I saw no evidence of overt racism at all within the club or anything like that. But clearly this was an institution that was really struggling to get traction with its local community. People were coming in from outside to watch. And again, this was something that I really tried while I was writing to dig a little bit into, because it was easy to make glib points about it. For example, the founder of the English Defence League was a Luton fan. At the same time, it was suggested to me by members of the Asian community themselves that they wouldn't come to watch because it was cold and they didn't like the cold, or that they wouldn't come to watch because they preferred cricket. And there was one amazing moment where I was into a shop near the stadium, a confectionery shop, and saw this amazing cake made out of green coconut, and it was a football pitch with lines made out of cream. And I asked the guy behind the counter, you know, did you go and watch the team? And he said, no, I like cricket. You know, so that these things are true, but they're not the whole story, because I also found young Asian men around the stadium wearing Juventus shirts, passionate football fans, really engaged, obsessed with the Premier League, who weren't going to watch Luton. So this is a much broader story. It's important, I think, with a lot of this stuff, the club were really generous in letting me come in and were very open. And you know, there were issues here, but this issue of how do you engage, particularly with an Asian community on your doorstep, is germane to a lot of clubs. You look at Leeds, Bradford, these big northern towns, and I don't think it's easy. But you know, we were talking off air about this. Is that a question about sustainability as well, if local young people are not coming in?
Do you think actually that the opportunity for those clubs to recruit young Asian men into football as players, potentially, or trainees that would then become players, is a way that they might address overcoming that brand conception?
I think very much so. This was raised to me that Asian professional football players are rare commodities. I think Zish Rahman is the example who comes to mind. And I think there's a number of layers to that. I think certainly in the past there has been quite overt racism in English football. As I said, I didn't see any evidence of that when I was reporting it. But I think there probably is a conceptual idea of what a footballer should look like that relates to body shape and to size. And I was thinking about this while I was researching the piece, and beforehand I read Moneyball by Michael Lewis, and again talking about that idea that baseball scouts had a concept that related to body shape of how a player should look. And that certainly doesn't tie to white players, for example. There's, you know, lots of fast black and Afro-Caribbean players in English football, but that is a body type that is accepted. And one point that was raised to me by an Asian coach was that this kind of different, and again I'm cautious how I phrase this, but you know, that players had a conception that people with a South Asian body type could not play on a top flight football pitch, which I don't think is true and I don't think backs up. But there's maybe a mentality with that. And I also got the sense that within the Asian community itself, there was reluctance, particularly from parents. These were immigrants who'd come often with very little money, but had been very professionally successful, and in the second and third generation, their kids were becoming lawyers, accountants, doctors, serious professional jobs, but also stable and certain professional jobs. And that there was reluctance from families to allow their young men, their boys, to pursue something that is very unlikely. And a point that was raised to me that I think probably is true is that if there was a breakthrough figure, the example raised to me is the boxer, I think Amir Khan, who was an Asian boxer, came through into a sport where Asians were not represented before. And that made not only youngsters think it was possible, but their families think it would be possible as well. And that would be, I mean, this was explicitly said to me that if Luton fielded an Asian player, it would increase the traction with the local community. Now, I put this to the club because I'd been told externally that the club had never fielded an Asian player in the academy or in the first team. And I put this, I wanted to hear their response to it, and they said, initially, yes, we definitely have, and we've had, they pointed out they had a coach who's Greek Cypriot, which is certainly true, but when I pushed for names on who, if they had fielded Asian players in the first team, I never heard back, I never got a response on that, so I don't have complete clarity. But again, a point that was raised to me was that this isn't necessarily just an abstract moral question about what the club should do. It's if they aspire to play much higher, and that's a big part of the Luton story, that this was a bigger team that had played top flight football. If they want to do that, if they want to build a new stadium and they want to fill it in Luton, they're going to need to reach traction with a town which has a massive Asian community. But it's not an easy thing to do, and it's a very complicated issue, and I'm very wary of saying that the club is acting in a wrong or misguided way here. I think they're dealing with a complex issue that no one really has worked out how to solve.